I'm gonna start recording. Ms. or Dr. Brackman, I wondered if you would send me the rubric that you were going to send me.
Oh, you should have been on the participants email list and gotten it about a week ago.
Oh, well, maybe I did and I didn't see that. Okay.
Or the list had a problem. I mean, mass
Okay.
mailing has been fraught. I will be sure to send that to you. In fact, I will do it
Okay.
right now.
Thanks. So I'm going to wait right until the hour and then we'll go ahead and get started, but I am recording now. So y'all behave yourselves. Nobody do anything obscene on camera because there is now a record of it. And there's Dr. Gilly. I want to tell you something, Dr. Gilly. I came face to face with you in the hallway last week, and I had no idea who you are, who you were. I was so used to the beard still that I don't recognize you without it. So
That's funny.
and you said something, and I knew who you were instantly. But yeah,
The short and bald guy doesn't ring a bell, but that's neat.
well, the bald guy, you got some competition around here for the bald guy, but
That I do. We are beautiful people.
oh yeah. There's Anne Marie. Anne Marie, if you can turn up your light or something so we can see you right now. You
Yeah,
look
that's
very,
what I'm
Glare.
trying to do, but it's not working. So
Oh, that was better. Whatever you just did.
yeah, if you want me to stand on my head, that might work, but it's not. Changing offices did me a disservice light-wise, so I don't know how to fix it otherwise.
I have to turn it this way for two reasons. One is I want to get Yoga Cat in. You see Yoga Cat up there in the corner. The other thing is that I can put my feet up on my desk, which is my favorite place for them to be.
And a lot of information. Mhm.
And I do have celebrity socks on today. Today it's sandwiches.
How are those
Nice.
celebrity socks?
Pardon?
What makes
I
them?
I don't know.
He's
Oh.
the celebrity.
They're novelty socks. So
Okay, novelty I could understand, but I didn't know which celebrity was a sandwich.
yeah, don't call out the English person on the exact diction. That's not gonna
Sorry,
work.
I don't know what I was thinking. I was just looking for some clarity.
Whatever.
How are you all
he does.
doing?
Whatever
Good,
he does
good.
is a celebrity.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. My brain shuts down when I see Marty Seller's name. Because suppose I want to talk about him, then he's right there. This
Mm-mm.
is to the fat.
No.
I'm not-
And he turned his camera off. So
I know.
oh, there he is. Okay.
This is exactly why I had trouble getting dates in high school. Brains turned right off as soon as I came in the room.
Now, are you sure that's the reason why? I mean,
We have other.
I can think of like a dozen reasons. I'm just kidding.
You don't know me that well to come up with a dozen reasons.
We can talk to Patricia. She'll tell us.
All right, it's on the hour according to my clock. It is noon. I'm sure we'll have other people showing up. And if you don't want us to see you like chewing the cud, then by all means turn your camera off. It's no problem. I think, yeah, everybody here knows me. I'm Dr. Bragg, and the Research and Scholarship Committee at AHSS has been doing this. This is the sixth one. This is something we started a couple of years ago, and right now more of them have been virtual thanks to COVID than in person. But I think it works just fine. We don't actually have to watch each other eat, for one thing. But it's just a lot easier for people to drop in. And the last time we did this, we didn't do it last semester. We should have, but we didn't. But we were actually more in lockdown than not. And so I did it from home and I had a class to teach via Zoom. And so I actually had to shut it down after we were into it for an hour. This time, I'm going to leave my computer open and the Zoom open and the computer going if people are still coming in and wanting to chat. I had to stop somebody from talking last time, and I felt terrible. So we'll let this go as long as we want. But the whole point here is you jump in and you talk about your research. It's not formal. Your research talk can actually be a series of questions. Here's what I have that I'm working on. Here's a frustration I'm having with it. Y'all listen to me. Am I crazy? Do you have any
Yes.
solutions? And so on. That's
Oh, no,
really the
very
whole deal.
thoughtful.
And that's why it's just chewing the fat. We just decided we have a bunch of interesting people, and we don't really find an occasion to discuss our research. So that said, I'll shut up, and floor is open. Anybody would like to discuss?
Well, I had to raise my hand
Oh, no,
and be ethical.
I'm going to mute myself here.
Okay. I have a request to collaborate with someone on, see, this is why I didn't want the dean here. I need to do some research, but my mind is a blank. I cannot think of anything that I'm trying to do, mainly because some other things are going on, but I'm just blank. So I'd like to, if possible, collaborate with someone who is writing something that social work-ish, human service-ish, people can join in and save me from not publishing in the last so many years. But so there's my request out there. If anybody's writing, if I can collaborate with you, I'd be appreciative. And if not, then, you know, any ideas to what I can write on or work on. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, social work-ish. What are you interested in? What kind of stuff have you worked on before? I mean,
Yeah, I'm interested in a whole bunch of stuff, but like I said,
I hear you.
my brain is just at a loss right now to say, oh, let me work on this. I think maybe because COVID has stopped so many things that I probably have stopped with it. And so I'm not even sure. Domestic violence is my lifelong soapbox because it touches so many frame of reference in my life. So grief and loss, how students are coping with COVID, the anxiety of COVID, and even going to class. And I'm trying to not talk about my student, but seeing someone without a mask, if you have anxiety, causes anxiety. So just a whole bunch of stuff going on. And I actually started working on an article last year that had to do with our accreditation, our reaccreditation. And it got stopped in its tracks for two reasons. One, we didn't get reaccredited the date we thought we would. And two, I sent out some surveys and no one responded. And I was like, oh, good Lord. So just a whole bunch of stuff going on. So thank you, Rebecca, for asking what's on my mind, but it's just a whole lot of stuff that I haven't been able to meet it out as yet. Yeah.
I bet there'd be a lot of overlap with education.
Oh, for sure.
And you mentioned, I was thinking that, I mean, a lot of the IRB stuff that comes through, there's social work type issues with students.
Mm-hmm.
And you even mentioned a student.
Yeah. And Rebecca, historically, with the 125th celebration, historical aspects did come up when we were writing our little blurb, excuse me, to say what has happened in the past and what's happening now. So it certainly could be partially historic. I'm not a historian by any means, so hence the research aspect of it is like, yeah, I can't do that. But I would collaborate with someone who's doing it and put in my 3 cents, and you might give me 2 cents back, but that's a whole other story.
Would you possibly be interested in
Yes.
looking at, because one of the places I might go next is narrative medicine, which intersects quite a lot with disability theory.
Okay,
Would,
all right.
would you be interested possibly in looking at narratives of illness and disability in the Middle Ages and kind of teasing out where they intersect or don't with modern social work practices and kind of what approaching those texts from that perspective could bring to them?
If you could write what you just said, yes, I'm interested in doing it.
I
You
would
said a
translate
whole
everything
bunch
for
of stuff that, and I caught several words. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Yes, yes. So yes, what you said sounds great. Are you working on something similar to that?
I'm still torn between two possible topics, but that is one of the ways I'm toying with going. And if you're
Well,
interested,
we
that
need to have a
that could,
meeting because that's
yeah, that
awesome.
could push me over. I mean, just like,
Yeah.
ooh, hey, that
Yeah,
would be
no,
fun.
that's awesome because I don't know anything about the Middle Ages. I know they happened somewhere in the middle, but that's about it.
Hang around with me, you'll know a lot more.
Okay, I appreciate that. But you mentioned the disability angle, not angle, but the disability aspect of it. And disability has come such a long way since the Middle Ages. Not just the knowledge of it, but the acceptance of it. And disability has come full swing to where it's not always obvious disabilities. And that's where social work runs into problems with the clients, and then the clients have issues because they're not seen as disabled because you can't see the disability. So yes, that would be awesome to work on.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we'll chat sometime.
Okay, see, Tom, mission accomplished today. I'm just saying, mission accomplished. If nothing else gets done, your mission has been accomplished.
Yeah,
Thank you,
we
Rebecca.
aim to be what's it called? The matchmaker service
Okay,
for researchers.
I love it. That's
Forgotten what
wonderful.
they're called. I mean, I've never used one. So
Well, I hope not, since your lovely wife is
what do they call that? Something, eHarmony.
eHarmony.
We aim to be the eHarmony for researchers. There we go.
Not Match.com.
Whatever.
Okay, all right, Rebecca, you and I will set up a Zoom meeting. Thank you, thank you.
Hey
Okay, I
guys,
don't want to hear anybody else's notes because I can't handle more than one right now. I'm just
I had
joking.
one for you.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
listening.
so yeah, hey guys, sorry I'm on my way back to Knoxville, but and I'm showing up as Titus. That's my middle name. But this is Trey Asbury from psychology. Yeah, obviously a lot of possibilities in terms of collaboration, similarities between social work and psych.
Right.
One of the things that I've been kind of tossing around is kind of getting on the COVID bandwagon in terms of doing some research with students and looking to see how students are doing with online courses. The kind of have an underlying agenda with that. Hopefully, the students that are actually finding that they're performing well with online courses would be something I could use for marketing
Okay.
for the online master's program that we're getting ready to boot up. So I don't have any specifics in mind with that, but
Well, I teach online courses fall and spring, so, and I'm fully online. And so I have the student data that if we can get that together and work on it, that would be fabulous.
yeah, and you know that topic has been broached before COVID, but
Mhm.
you know, the more the better. And looking at, I'm most interested in like students that were against taking online courses and then
Oh, okay.
forced into that mode last year. And you know, did they change their perceptions about it? If so, you know, why, and so on and so forth. So
Okay.
it'd be probably more descriptive, but yeah, we could definitely, if you're interested in that general idea, sit down and brainstorm that.
Yeah, that sounds good because in 2020, when we were forced onto online because of Zoom in March of 2020, the students had no choice. And some of them did not like it at all. And some didn't appreciate it mainly because of their internet in this area, in the East Tennessee area and in the Harrogate, La Follette, Speedwell type area, internet is horrid. And so there are various reasons why online is not loved by many students. So yeah, we can look into many of the factors.
Cool.
All right, thanks, Trey.
Yeah, sure.
All right, Dean, close your ears because don't look for the research tomorrow, okay? So just, but yeah, this is great. Thank you, guys.
Let me just hop in here a moment and say, and then I think I see Charles, I'll give you the floor in just a sec. I just wanted to say that the research committee is putting together a presentation, a more formal presentation by Dr. Salata. It will be the week after spring break. Don't have a day for you yet, but it'll be early afternoon. And it will be in a classroom here in Avery. And her title, which she's just sent me, is Discovering the Life of a Medieval Merchant in the Notarial Documents. And notarial, I gather, means pertaining to notary public, pertaining to notarized documents. So it is on the Middle Ages. And Deb's going to be presenting on that topic. Again, as soon as I have a time and a date, but I will send it out, but it will be the week after spring break if all goes well. Okay. Dr. Hubbard, I believe you were going to speak.
Well, all I was going to say is that I was going to mention that I thought Dr. Salata had done some work already in this area. And I think also that Joanna Nielsen has done some work with the instructional side of trying to work with it in terms of linking up pedagogical skills with academic, more academic challenging courses, and to some extent, I think she's done some quality work in analyzing the online instruction process and of course teaching online. So I think you might find some go-to help there already, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And one thing I will tell you that anytime, it has been my experience that anytime I have to rely on questionnaires and responses from other folks, contemporaries, students, or even people in our building to try to collect data, I seem to get stumped. And personally, I don't like having to rely on other folks for my research. And these kind of questionnaires that get sent out sometimes turn out to be a stumbling block. At least they have been for me. When I was trying to work some with the School of Education, they into collecting data, and they do it with these questionnaires. And I had a very frustrating time trying to gather information with that vehicle. So I would suggest maybe when that can be avoided, come up with another system to gather data than the questionnaire idea, because that makes you dependent on somebody else's response. And I don't particularly, I have enough trouble keeping myself going, much less trying to motivate other people. So that's a couple of things that popped up while you all were talking, I thought might be of interest.
It's very
Thanks,
good.
Charlie, and that makes sense. Great points.
Yeah,
Thanks.
some of us in humanities don't deal with statistics a whole lot. And so I remember when I was on faculty senate in South Carolina, we were trying to get people to do various surveys, and I heard, well, it was 30% response. And I said, oh my God, that's terrible. And they said, no, that's really, really good. I was stunned. So I'm sorry, I interrupted someone.
No, Anita, I was just gonna, oh, somebody else. I was
Go
just
ahead,
gonna say that last fall, the students, we completed a survey and, or we completed a study. And what we did was we wanted to survey undergraduate students. And we did it through LMU, and it was very hard to go through IRB actually, because what our topic was definitions of date, rape, and sexual consent. We were just comparing their definitions. So they made us take out, IRB made us take out a lot that had to do with identifiers. just asking even their class and their level. They didn't want us to do that. But anyway, we finally got it done and sent all these out. We didn't get one response. I mean, we got nothing, and because we sent it out through the email system. So, I mean, we didn't get anything.
Wow.
So I have a question for you guys. Dr. Sellers is still on board, probably more so to him. This is my third institution I've taught at in my career, and being in psychology, we've always, with my past institutions, we've required our intro students as part of their grade to participate in research. And so it's a small percentage of their grade, but it's a captive audience. And I know it's a small department, but you're talking about getting no responses. I think we have 60 some psych majors, and it doesn't have to just be intro to psychology. We could do that, with social work students, sociology as well. I don't know, thoughts about that, about requiring our undergraduates to participate in studies?
The only thing I'll add to that is the IRB would not approve that because they didn't want, we were even going to have one of the students in the study was working with the undergrads in their housing. And one of our ideas was, could she give out surveys or, get consents and then surveys? And they said no, because it has to be completely anonymous. So they didn't want us to even, stand on campus and talk about it or go to classrooms. They wouldn't let us do it.
If you're doing research from your own classes, that's where it gets kind of tricky. And also it has to be optional. Students have to, with human research, they have to be allowed to opt out.
Right.
Because otherwise there's this potential for strong arming a student to who doesn't want to participate.
Yeah, we got around that issue by giving them alternatives. If there wasn't any study that was available that they were comfortable participating with, then they could do some journal article critiques. In terms of getting around the anonymity issue, I've done a lot of research with online surveys and with systems like, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with a platform called Sona, but with Sona, there's a cost to everything, but with Sona, you can actually, at the end of the survey, have a link to another survey where the student then enters their Sona ID. So it's completely anonymous. Their name or their Sona ID is not linked to the survey. They get credit just by pulling down the data file that has their Sona ID, but there's no way to trace that, to connect that back to the survey that they completed. One exception to that is the IP address on their computer. So, and we let them know that if you want this to be completely anonymous, when you go to the Sona ID survey, do that from a different computer.
I mean, you could always submit that proposal to the IRB. I'm on the IRB, and Dr. Paris will definitely look at it and could give you some recommendations and see what she thinks. It's just tricky when it's with our own students, depending on the topic. I think usually though, if it's just something like how they feel about, that might not be such a big deal.
I don't know if SurveyMonkey would be acceptable for IRB, Abby. I'm just looking at your note. I don't know.
I think it is. I think, as a matter of fact, I think I had that on our IRB originally, and we ended up using Qualtrics, but
if you use Qualtrics, either one, it'll be anonymous.
Yeah.
Well, the one problem, Qualtrics is probably the better option, but the one problem with SurveyMonkey is that once you submit it, they really own everything, and so I think they've allowed Survey Monkey research to take place, but that's one of the considerations.
That's a good consideration.
Yeah, there's no control over it really whatsoever. And once, I mean, so there's no way to destroy it.
Yeah, I think it's a privacy issue, right? I know I've had
Sure.
discussions about that before, and the Sona platform I mentioned before addresses that.
Yeah, like if one of your students says, yeah, I took that public administration class and that professor was a jerk. And then it gets out. I'm just hypothetical, Dr. Sellers.
I sure hope so. Let me detour just a little bit. I'm noticing the notes also about cheating. Is it, all of you are teaching online? We all are here and there. Not all of our classes, but some of them. And is this really a rampant? I saw the word rampant on there. Is that what it is?
It's up 700 to 800% according to ETS, who does the GRE, the SAT, and the ACT.
And AP, yeah.
But what is your experiences yourselves here at LMU?
Wait a minute, I was going to say I use the lockdown browser,
Yeah.
and that works really well because they're on camera. And you
A lot of
can see
people
it.
are
I mean,
having tr-
basically, if they move
Sorry.
away from the screen, even it picks up on them.
A lot of people are having trouble with lockdown browser. It's had
Oh.
some implementation problems.
Oh,
I think Abby's question was, is anybody doing research on that? Because that would be really interesting.
Yes. Students were excited to share, hey, once COVID started, I really fell behind in my whatever class. And I just started cheating, but I'm a good person. And I mean, they're volunteering so much information. I was like, you don't have to say this. You don't have to, and they, no, I wanted to tell you because it's happening. Kind of like, you speed to keep up with traffic on that road right in front of LMU.
I've never cheated, nor have I ever sped in the car, and I don't like that you imply that I have, Abby.
I can tell you that I just started using the lockdown browser for a test. And the first time I tried it, the cheating was just awful. I mean, it was difficult to find anyone who hadn't cheated or plagiarized in some way from some online sort of connection. So, and I'm not a very savvy technical person anyway, but what I have started to do is I ask them to bring their laptop to the regular class, and we take class time to do the test, the exam. And that way I can at least proctor them while they are in the lockdown browser. The lockdown browser works fine to the extent that it works, but it doesn't prevent them from using a phone while they're doing it and all that, which reminds me of kind of a interesting story I had last semester. I've had all sorts of telephone gadgets, watches, earrings, all sorts of methods of accessing Wikipedia. But this particular person had his phone, cell phone, underneath his thigh, sitting in the chair, and he would hunker down over the table like this and punched a button on his cell phone, and he was connecting to whatever, probably Google or something. And so I went by and noticed that the light on his phone was on, and it was shining through his trousers. So I tapped him on the shoulder and suggested that he immediately go over to the student infirmary or see a doctor because his crotch was glowing. He was just lit up all over down there. And that's a good way to catch them if they're doing that. Look for the lights. But the problem for me has been when we get one of these. Dr. Sellers remembers we had some of these issues. Seems like every semester I have someone, and the question is, what are you going to do? How are you going to discipline this? Do you want to bust these people out of school? You want to go through the appeals process? What do you want to do to try to bring some order and some discipline to the process to avoid the cheating? And you know, I'm almost finished here as far as teaching goes, and so you guys will be able to come up with some solutions to that. But it has been a problem for me, trying to figure out how to, one, prevent it, and two, when you catch them or you identify a cheater, what do you do to try to treat them fairly and not be too punitive, but at the same time do something to stop it?
I think let's bring this back to research. Catherine Pepworth of the Health, Exercise Science, and whatever that department's changed name so many times. She actually has done research on this.
Mhm.
Now it was pre-COVID, and I don't know, you know, if she would change some of the questions or if she's continued on with it. But as far as research, she might be someone that people who would like to do work on this topic and to help us determine best practices for dealing with it might contact her.
Well, there again, I think her research has been dependent on surveys and LMU surveys from and her own collection.
Not really. She was going out through a whole bunch of secondary sources, and
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, she was. I think a lot of it came from the teachers of Capford. Anyway, she's in some, you know, state and even national organizations, and they were compiling stuff, and she was kind of aggregating their data.
I know she did some work at one point a couple of years ago about the percentage. She came up with some staggering numbers about the percentage of athletes, scholarship athletes, who were cheating in multiple different classes, not the same sort of thing, classes. So I know you're right. She's done quite a bit of work. It may be dated a little bit. I'm sure it is pre-COVID, but nevertheless, that's a good start.
I have a thought about the pre-COVID thing. And I'm sharing this insight. I have a long list, over 500 topics that I get from the New York Times that I choose my essay topics from for 102. And one that I've been using for a number of years is an evaluation argument, which is more effective online instruction or in-class instruction. And it's always been a good assignment because it allows me to make the distinction with them of effective, which is a logos-based set of arguments, versus, let's say, convenient, because a student who doesn't do the research will simply say, oh, online's better because you don't have to go to class and blah, 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 blah. And that's, you know, that's at best a pathos argument, not a logos argument. Well, what happened was in 2020, 2021, anyone who took that topic, it was real clear to me that they were basing their assessment, personal assessment of online instruction on all of the classes that they were having to take then. And I started to explain to them, yeah, but you're not really looking at online instruction. You're looking at a lot of people who've never been interested in online instruction, who've never designed an online course, and they're suddenly throwing everything that they've got, they normally do in the classroom, online. Okay. And that's, I mean, online instruction, I was trying to tell them, hey, I took an online course. You know, this has been a long time that this has been in development. So I speculate on this matter that some of the reason why cheating numbers have gone way up is just that. A lot of online courses weren't actually designed to be online courses. And so there's a lot of holes in them. I started to design online courses around 2006 or 7. And that's when I actually got in touch with things like pools, you know, random groups of questions. A lot of the ways that I ensure or at least discourage cheating are built in to the process. And I don't think a lot of the online courses during COVID, we can say that for. So I would have expected the numbers to go up. It seems to me anybody doing research on that, back to Abby's research question, is going to have to account for that. That sort of notion that people are taking online courses that are really just traditional classroom courses stuck online. Thought.
Well, I'm thinking about what you just said, Tom, and just a sidebar, congratulations, Tom, on your award that you won, and great job. My thought about just putting a class, just sticking it up online to say that this is an online class, I'm not sure if we're doing that as much these days, because CTLE is monitoring how we do our online classes, and there are guidelines that stipulate what we can and cannot do and what we need to do, and they're monitoring how we respond to the students. And so I'm not sure if today, February 16, 2022, that we're continuing that. I'm sure it has happened, but I'm not sure if we're doing that, because they're pretty much monitoring what we do and trying to make it an online specific class rather than just, hey, here's my syllabus, let me just tack it up online.
I agree with that. And I'm not even really speaking in terms of LMU so much as the increase that's been noted in places like the Chronicle, that, you know, that the whole headline idea of cheating has doubled, tripled, quadrupled during COVID. I think a lot of it is because the courses weren't designed to be online. That's just across higher ed.
Yeah, and it's not just higher ed. In licensing exams, Pearson has the Association of Social Work Boards, the stories that they could tell about Pearson and what they have found out. And I think someone mentioned that they're on camera, and people don't really care if they're on camera. They come in with glasses that have cheating mechanisms in them, their watches. I think they said they saw one person just writing on taking off the information off the sleeve of the shirt, I mean, the collar of the shirt. So Pearson has seen so much cheating. It's not just in higher ed. It's not just in a class. So it is rampant. So.
One distinction that I made when I started to design online courses is I started to, you can't do this for every subject, but whenever possible, you started to test applied knowledge rather than, you know, just sort of a feedback kind of thing that would work in a regular classroom situation. What is the answer to this? Instead of that, take the answer to this and use it, put it to work in some way. Recognize the principle instead of reciting the definition of the principle, that sort of thing. If you can do that in online classes, or I think in traditional classroom classes, you're a lot less likely to get the cheater. It does mean, it may mean that grading the assessment is a little tougher. So anyway, I throw that out there if it's useful.
Well, let me, is someone thinking about actually doing research in this particular niche and trying to produce something that, and if that person or someone is doing that, where would you publish that type of article? Would you do it through some of the education journals, or where would you go that would be first. I guess that's two questions. One is anyone interested in pursuing that here? And that's those sort of investigations. And then where would you go to find a home for it? And once, if you could conclude that, you could probably get some guidance from that publication as to what they might be interested in doing, and how you might be able to couch your research to fit sort of what they had in mind publishing.
Dr. Heiniger asked the question, is that something that you're thinking of research on, Abby?
Something that my students have done, and I did it at a different university. I've definitely thought of doing it here. And dang, I want to say English teaching studies, but I think that's the wrong title. There is a journal that does this kind of thing, and I think, oh, this is right up that alley. Anyways, my students were super excited about this and excited to share, which is something I don't typically get. Oh, this is the first time I cheated, and I used and I was almost astounded at what they wanted to share. I was like, okay, yeah, that's great. You can stop sharing at any moment. So I'm sorry, I did not mean to start all of this, but that was something that students were doing.
That's okay.
You could always just go harvest data off of Yik Yak. I'm quite serious.
Yes.
They will happily announce their plans to cheat on an exam in Yik Yak.
I love that.
That's okay, Abby. I mean, we will reorient now. I'll hit reset a little bit and see if somebody would like to take us into a different research topic. But we did accomplish something here. We've shared some ideas already about online instruction, cheating, etc. Possible research topic for Abby. We found a possible research partner or partners for Anne-Marie. See, so we're always thinking, always getting things done. Since some different people have arrived now, and including Dr. Salata, I will announce again here, Dr. Salata is going to speak the week after spring break, and I will have a date time for that. And I read your title earlier, Deb, and when you talk about notarial documents, that means a document that has to do with notary, being notarized?
Correct, be a notarized document.
Okay.
And usually the person who's actually writing the document is the notary himself. So
Okay.
I'll explain that when I sort of, as I give background information to the Medieval Merchant.
Great. Okay. And so I will find a room and a time more specific and announce that. But let me go ahead and hit reset here and see if somebody else would like to discuss their research, ask questions, share an experience, and we'll take this off in a different direction.
I'll do it. I'll step up. Okay. NILS, name, image, likeness. Okay. NILS. I'm sure you've all heard of this. This is where student athletes can be paid for the use of their name, image, likeness. All right. They can't be paid by the university. They can be paid by a third party, a business, a donor, a corporation, national, a local business. And so what I'm reading is a lot of advocacy for this to happen. If you think of someone like Zion Williams, who was a star basketball player at Duke, whenever he went on social media, he had 10,000 followers. And if he could have sold and collected funds for each of those hits that he got, he would have been, astronomically wealthy. In addition, when he broke his or hurt his knee in a basketball game where his Nike shoe blew out. The very next day, Nike Incorporated lost $1 billion in assets, and recovered slowly over the next 2 years because that famous person, and I'm saying all this because I've read a lot of articles about this issue, whether student athletes should collect funding while they're in college. And 99%, not that I've read 100 articles, let's say 9.9%, 90% of the articles I read are advocacy for these young people to collect money for having being very valuable to the colleges. Universities collect, UNC and Duke and University of California, they make a lot of money from the NCAA, through media, through selling clothing because of a usually famous athlete being on their campus, but the students don't collect. So they get scholarship money. Well, when you're Michael Jordan, Zion Williams, one of these very famous athletes, that doesn't amount to a whole lot of beans for them. The issue I'm wondering about, and I'd like your input on either, and it doesn't have to be right now, but you can send me an email, is most of the writing is advocacy for these students to collect the money. And I can't find anything where someone's saying, well, wait a minute, these are student athletes. Aren't they here to learn? And I'm already having trouble in my thoughts about how well, in general, student athletes are learning compared to the average students that I have who are not athletes. I'm already, as a faculty member, having trouble with that. And now I'm going to add to that another variable where some will be collecting a lot of funding because of how well they play. Now, if you think about what that means, how well they play, are they going to stay up late at night reading Dr. Sellers' Chapter 5 of Public Administration, or are they going to be out there shooting hoops to make sure, you see what I mean? Like, it's an issue I can't get my arms around. So anyway.
Just to clarify, Dr. Sellers, and then Dr. Brackman to you, but this is something you are actually researching to write about?
Yes, I was asked to supply journal articles to the American Society of Public Administration, and I did an article in the fall for them. It was a short piece, probably about 800 words, and it was in their online journal. Now I've been asked, I requested and was approved to give a presentation in Jacksonville in March. And so now I'm collecting more information. And I'll tell you that I'm just becoming very overwhelmingly unhappy about this whole process, because no one seems to be advocating for the student athlete. I'm about to call it athlete students from now on, because I don't see it, down the road, it's just not going to be student athlete.
So clarification, because I'm not actually that familiar with the name, image, likeness model. So the school would not be paying the athletes,
Yes,
but the
correct.
athletes would be, and so that would still be disallowed. That would still be a violation if the school paid them. But it would open them up to receive funding from outside sources, from advertising, sponsorships, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I wonder what the intellectual property implications are for, especially the image. If they play for LMU, there's going to be LMU logos in there. We own that image. The student doesn't own that image. Yeah. So I almost wonder if you want to bounce this off of somebody in the legal department of the law school and get their take on it.
Yeah.
Just from the intellectual property aspect.
And again, this is such a new arena of discussion that has come up. Several states now, as I understand it, 15 states, and probably more today, as these things are happening as we speak, have their own series of regulations about this, which is a whole other issue because California is different than North Carolina. But yeah, a company like the Royal down the street could pay Jordan Guest, major male and by the way, there's a gender issue here too, because it's male basketball and male football, if you will. But aside from that, which doesn't go away, the Royal could pay Jordan Guest, or give him a Cadillac. And it being it is good forever. He could sell, or give him $10,000, and then they would, again, it would be the Royal with Jordan's name and picture, and they would put on the back of the trucks or whatever. Yeah, no, it's a good point, Rebecca. That I don't know. I agree with you. I don't know how that pans out, and that's an issue that it's kind of a side issue that creeped up in one of the articles. It's out there.
Another question. I'm sorry, Deb, can I jump in first?
Mhm.
And just one more thought about, you might look and see if people have suggested this, or if any places have tried it. The students would have to report this as taxable income, presumably. So there would be a public record of how much they received or the value of what they received. Would schools possibly then be required to diminish their scholarships or their bookstore stipends or whatever by that amount, and then theoretically give it to another student who isn't? It's like, okay, the entire men's basketball team is sponsored, so hey, we could spend less money on them and we could spend money on the women's lacrosse team or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that being explored at all?
Yeah, that, and there's about 20 issues similar with regard. Like, give you another example, and yeah, you're on target here. These are the kinds of things that no one's aware of, how to go forward. But I feel like there's a train moving, and no one knows where it's going, and you can't stop it, because the NCAA is a huge powerhouse, as well as these huge companies like Nike. They're looking forward to having, like, inter-team competition and distrust all of a sudden crops up, because we have, or inter-college team distrust, like the volleyball team, the women's volleyball team, which will get no money, and the men's football team will get a whole lot of money. And so why would anybody want to come to that school to play volleyball any longer? Because nobody cares about volleyball. All of those issues about, and then within a team, we have the Jordan Guests, and we have this other guy out there who I never see play. How do we deal with inner locker room arbitration over these balancing effects of these things? I don't know what's going to come of it.
I have a couple comments regarding this, Martin. One, schools are already paying students, large schools, big name schools are already paying students to a certain degree when they wine and dine them to invite them to come and play. That is a form of payment. And that's been an issue for a long time in how, they've never counted that as payment. The other thing is that students do, if you have a well-performing team, particularly your basketball or your football team, that makes a lot of money for the schools, because it draws the alumni back to those games, who then contribute to that school. And other programs, and you mentioned the sort of competition between different athletic teams. Well, less fortunate athletic teams that don't draw that kind of alumni focus or donations do benefit indirectly if the other teams do make more money, because the school benefits in general. But there is an issue at, why shouldn't a student benefit if he's performing well for the school is making money off of his efforts to some degree. And even if it's the school, not paying him directly in some kind of funds, if he can get money from sponsors, from social media, from whatever, I think it's more power to him to help pay for whatever other expenses he has.
Yeah, if I just real quickly, and Rebecca, thank you for your note. Structuring this is what I'm trying to form. Here it is, February. This is typical of Marty Sellers. February rolling along. I have to go speak about this thing early March, and here I am still compiling piles of information and nowhere close to getting close. But anyway, yeah, the whining and dining thing has always been an issue, and it's monitored closely by the NCAA, as closely as any Bruce Pearl can admit to. But some coaches have lost jobs because of that kind of thing. But that's a minimal thing. What we're talking about here is the big companies like the Nikes and others, Spalding, coming in and paying Zion Williams $1 million to be able to use his image or his name or something. I wanted to focus, though, as an academic. I'm trying to think through how this will affect how the students are in the class and what they're thinking about, how they're working toward coming to class. I'm just beside myself thinking about this.
Here's a concern, and again, you've researched this already. Are people talking about one of the big elephants in the room, which is athletic programs that recruit students that have no realistic chance of completing college? They don't speak English. They're academically underprepared, and the programs bring them in knowing darn good and well they're going to get 2-3 good seasons out of them. Their eligibility will crash, and they'll just spit them out. I mean, and at that point, the students will have no college degree. Sure, they've gotten playing experience, but most of these kids aren't going pro. I mean, is this going to be just another kind of excuse for students who academically cannot complete college to be here?
Can I quickly make a comment here, because I have to go for a 1 o'clock class too. I was teaching a class at the University of Minnesota, and one of their star receiver on the football team was in my history class. And I was failing him. I got calls from the coaches, from the university, from counselors. They were on my back to either make sure this kid passed somehow, or think of a way to sort of help him get through this class. And literally, I took him to the library when he had to do some library research. I literally accompanied him to the library. He had never been in the library, and he was, I think, a junior or senior at that point. So, I knew that the coaching staff were writing papers for some of their athletes in my class. And, to be honest, that has actually happened at least once at LMU, and a coach has been fired for that in the past. So with that, I'm sorry I have to leave.
Well, let me just add that Charlie and I had a student that was a basketball player. This is about 3 years ago. And Dr. Hubbard and I remember a basketball player about 2 or 3 years ago. And, we got immediate response, as you say, Deb, from an assistant coach, the coach. There was somebody, an advocate, I don't know who it was, that came in the room. I don't know. There was like 5 people up in room 303 upstairs telling Charlie and I basically that we better get with the program. And so, I got Dr. Toomey involved because he's taller than I am and Charlie, and I figured he could beat him down to submission. I'll tell you who was not in the room, who next time will be. And that will be the guy who owns that big business down the street, who's been paying this kid for his likeness. He will be sitting at that academic table saying, you will not throw this kid off the team. You see what I mean? There's a whole new player.
I have to admit that the football player himself was he was the biggest student I've ever had in my life. I mean, he knelt in front of me to talk to me, and he was still taller than me, and I was standing up.
Yeah.
And then when I went to the library with him and I was chatting with him, like what, if you don't make a pro team, what do you want to do? He told me he wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. I mean, it was that kind of thing. But the coaching staff is really, can be really aggressive.
Well, let me say one of the things that in response to Rebecca's comment, a lot of these kids are culturally, for lack of a better term, culturally deprived. And they are not prepared for all the things that Rebecca has said. But if they come and stay for 2 seasons, they've been exposed at least to the university environment and during a formative part of their life when they're moving away from being teenagers. And that exposure is worth a lot, whether they ever graduate or not. It's an introduction to another world for some of these people that they've never experienced off the street corner in the inner city. And I think that they're, despite the fact that they're coming as athletes, not coming as serious students, to some extent, that exposure, even though they don't graduate, that exposure is worth a lot. But however, this goes back to the cheating thing. If they are encouraged to cheat, to pass, if the pressure is on them to pass and they can't do the work, they cheat. And this goes back to doing research on, and I think as far as what you're doing, Martin, I think in your talk in March is to think in terms of raising these questions. This thing of paying athletes with endorsements and other things has been around for several years, but it has only in the last year or so was sort of pushed through, and now we have it. And no one really thought about all of the different sets of regulations that are going to apply. And another big difference here, I think, is Division I athletes are the ones that are going to get the money and the endorsements. It's not going to be the LMU students, I don't think. They don't have the international or the national recognition that these other Division I teams, like a quarterback for the University of Alabama or something like that, is going to have a high profile. The quarterback, we don't have a football team, but the quarterback at LMU is not going to have that. And so I just don't think that as far as Division II and smaller schools are concerned, the student athlete will still be a student athlete and should be encouraged to do that.
Let me jump in there, just at one little point, Charlie. I thought the same way about the international and Division I, but there are the hometown hero athletes that will get $5,000 or $10,000 to put that one face up on a billboard. And in
the local sports bar.
Yeah, thank you. And the beer glasses has their
right.
So, and that's still going to have an impact on that student and on the team and on studying. It's an issue, and I'm grappling with it.
Well, I think for your purposes in March, to raise the questions that you raised with us in the appropriate forum where you're making this talk, to raise these questions because they haven't been answered. The answers are not out there yet, and that's where that's where the creativity and the thinking direction needs to go. Focus in on what who on your campus is responsible for this. Who you have a committee? What have you got going to do these kind of things, to police this thing and to make it work? We all want it to work. And it's fair for the students. They deserve compensation for this because they're being used otherwise. So why not give them a piece of the pie?
Thank you for your listening to me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, I think Tom's gone and the rest of us are here. I'm heading out, so if there's nothing else that I need to respond to, thank you all for everything. Rebecca, we'll chat another time.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. I'm leaving.